I'm Scott Allen Miller. It's the 29th of July, 2023. This is my vlog of daily life living in Leon, Nicaragua. And today we're doing a bit of mix of topics, and I'm doing it here from the garden because we are heading out, finally, we believe, to do our tour tomorrow, and I'm going to be on the road. So need to get one of these knocked out. But we did a walk in Calvarito yesterday, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that. We're going to be doing more barrio walks soon. But first we're going to get to the bunk. Talking about a few small items today to add up to an episode. One is thank you so much to everyone on the channel who a couple months ago now did the challenge to try to raise some money through Buy Me a Coffee. My buddy Frank Javier, who is actually here in Leon right now, trying to hook up and hang out, and we'll get him on the show again. He has been on the show before, but we just haven't been able to do anything because I'm doing so much travel. We was in the Ipico in Managua, that took up 2 days, and I'm about to do this trip, and the time in between is very tight, so it's been hard. But he did this matching, so anyone who did Buy Me a Coffee in large amounts during that time, he matched. And the goal, not monetarily, but there was a monetary goal, but the purpose of that goal was to be able to get a camera for doing a lot more of this vlogging. For those who don't pay attention or are new, I do most of my show on GoPros with the occasional Insta360. For walking around. That's how I get a lot of stuff, and those are perfect for these really bright light scenarios. It's kind of why I picked being out here. I'm on the older GoPro 9 right now in absolutely brilliant direct sunlight in the middle of the day. It's like noon, right? And it's just bearing down, and these cameras just rock under these conditions. Wow, do they look good. Every time I get these super bright days where I'm like, I can't see the camera, and then I go to edit it, I'm like, ooh, the colors just pop. And I have this on a flat profile, right? Like this is, it's not the flat, but there's no vibrancy, right? This is what it looks like here. This is the real look of Nicaragua on a bright day, right? As long as you're not being blinded by the sun. It is greens and blues and just wows, right? So the GoPros and the Insta360 rock at this, and I love the images off of them, but there's so many things that look bad. Like as soon as it starts getting dim at all, the tiny sensors on these things, and the GoPro 11 actually has a smaller sensor in practical sense than the GoPro 9. If you don't believe me, go watch Camera Conspiracies. He does all the math on that. Casey's freaking awesome. That's my favorite camera show. If you go, he'll talk about that. And it's not like a big drop, but it's a tiny drop to an already itty-bitty sensor, so it has a really hard time in low light conditions. Well, there's a camera out there that kind of fits my needs in an incredibly good way. It's got a 1-inch sensor, which is huge compared to this. It's not big compared to like a full frame, but it's part of the large professional, it's the smallest of the large professional image sensor categories, or it's the largest of the just too small for. It's kind of the barrier zone, but several really important cameras do choose to use 1-inch sensors. And it's bigger than some of the things I've used pretty heavily in the past, like the LZ300 from Panasonic. So it's got the size to deal with decent low light, and it's got a fast lens. It is a tiny camera, and that's going to make a lot of sense for me. So we raised money for that, but one of my requirements is, one, I'm going to get it used. Like there's no way I'm going to pay new, like I don't do that. And I wanted to get it in white. Very hard to get. Only about 1%, I'm making up the numbers, but it's something like 1% of the cameras out there are available in white. Everything else is black. And that's one of the things. GoPro, please, white GoPros, please, please, please. The Insta360 is in white, so they figured it out. When you're outside in this sun, there's never a time that you're like, my camera is too cold. I wish it would stay warmer. I understand that some people do use GoPros skiing, and they actually do want it to be a little bit warmer, and they want to be able to see it in the snow. So I don't have a problem with having great logic that black is offered as a camera option. That it is the default, that it is the main one, makes no sense to me, because the majority of people, at least 2/3 of all people using the cameras, have the problem with them overheating, not of them freezing. And they don't need to look for them in snow. They need to look for them other places. White works way better for the average GoPro user, just like the average Insta360 user. So I'm refused to get this camera in black because it comes in white, and that would help a lot with the overheating issues, which is one of my biggest problems, that and the low light. So at the time that we did the competition, There was one white one available from MPB. I'm not sponsored, by the way, but I should be. So they had lots of black ones. I'm like, nope, I'm going to wait. I have patience. Unfortunately, I missed the window of when my wife was coming from the United States, and then Frank Javier was coming from the United States. I also missed that window. Now Paul is coming, but he's not going anywhere where he can pick anything up. So I missed thing after thing after thing, and I've been watching. I have an alert with MPB, so every single camera that comes through, I know about, and there are several because, okay, I'm going to say what it is. So it's the Sony ZV-1, which I think is an awesome camera from everything I've seen about it. I've never used a Sony, so I'm interested to play around with it. I have no desire to move into the Sony ecosystem, but this is a built-in lens camera, so I don't have to invest in lenses or anything like that. It's just a standalone. It's completely engineered around vloggers. It's got some pros, got some cons, but pretty much people rave about it. Really great camera with this amazing 1-inch sensor. And it matches the camera, the photo camera that Valentina just got. She got the photo version. This is the video version. Mine's white, hers is black. That's not the only difference, but that's the key. Same sensor, same processor, same overall camera. It's the same specs, but in a different body, different form factor, different control feel. One designed specifically around vlogging video use, and one just pocket, like street photography kind of stuff, which is what she does. So I'm really excited about this camera, and she's had hers for a couple months and loves it. So I have that really direct feedback as well. I had helped her pick it out, so I'm excited that we're like, you know, siblings in camera world. So I've been getting alerts, and every day there's several of these become available, probably because since the time we did the competition, Sony released the ZV-1 Mark II, which would make me sad that I'm going to get the Mark I and it's not as good. Except, actually, if you look the specs again, go watch Camera Conspiracy on that camera. In general, the consensus is it's a downgrade, not an upgrade. Some things are better. A lot of things are worse. You would never get the Mark II instead of the Mark I in a like upgrade kind of way. It would be it does things differently and it meets my needs better, so I'm going to get that, but it's a different camera. Like the lens doesn't seem as good, the stabilization isn't as good. I think the audio is better. I can work around the audio, but the stabilization and the lens, no way. The one on the ZV-1, way better. That's the right camera. So at first, I was like, is the price going to drop? And it didn't, but it finally did in this last week. So after 2 months since they released the Mark II, the price has dropped, and it's $100 cheaper. And last night, a white one came up on MPB in mint condition. I don't know, mint, excellent condition, which is their can't tell it's new, basically, and then excellent. I actually don't look for excellent. I look for the one below excellent normally because it means everything works, but it might be scratched up or something. Not the lens, just like the camera. So that's what I normally look for, save a couple bucks. I'm trying to be reasonable. But I got an excellent at $100 less than we were planning to spend 2 months ago. Got it in white. It has already shipped. It is on the way, and I'm very excited about that. Some of the things that I plan on using that for, a lot is going out to restaurants, a lot more candid stuff. Things like concerts and that kind of stuff is way better than the GoPro for filming. Generally, when I'm filming concerts, I'm either live streaming and it's coming off my phone, which does okay, but is pretty limited, or I have to like set up a big rig with like my Olympus, which is fantastic, right? Bigger sensor than that, bigger lenses than that, but it's a big thing to haul around. It's a big problem. The Sony, I can actually just take with me and be like, oh, there's a thing going on, let's record. And there's a lot of times it's like, I'm not going to lug all that stuff around. I'm not going to prep for that. The Sony's just all in one package. I'm really interested in playing with it and getting a feel for it, and excited that it should be so easy for me to carry around that I think it's going to add a lot of opportunity to get more content for the show that is of higher quality rather than like the Insta360. Yeah, it lets me get some things, the Go 3, that I couldn't get with the GoPro, but it also it's lower quality, like noticeably. You know, we make a sacrifice to get some interesting, you know, subtle shots or whatever. That's cool. But the Sony is going to up the game on the image quality and up the game on the flexibility. And of course, it just makes it more fun. It makes it exciting for me to get out and record things. You know, every so often, I've got to get a new camera gear. It keeps me excited. And here in Nicaragua, it's not like I can go to the store and buy stuff. So saving up, planning, getting exactly the right camera, getting that deal is a really big deal for me. So that has shipped. I'm very excited. My sister-in-law is on the lookout for it. And on to more of today's topic. It is now several hours later, but finally time to keep going on the video. So my second portion of the day, some of you have been watching and kind of gotten excited about this topic we have about this website that got canceled. So some of you may know I work for an IT consulting company, but that company owns a web hosting company. And that as a web hosting company, of course, we do normal web hosting. And that should be enough to explain what we do to pretty much everyone. The idea of what a web host is just general, normal knowledge. It's not something complicated or crazy. You want a website, it has to be hosted somewhere. There are companies who do that. We're one of them. That's about it. Like, there's nothing fancy in there. I mean, we like to think we do a really good service. It's a super premium service above other things. I could give you a spiel about it, but that's not really the point. The point is just that it's web hosting, right? Here's a file, go host it. It's a couple dollars a month and done. Right? Like that's it. It's simple. People do this with GoDaddy and SiteGround and who knows how many places every day. This is extremely, extremely normal, basic stuff. And it's not things where you need like an IT department. You should always have an IT department to oversee this stuff, right? Never ever try to do stuff without an IT department. It doesn't matter how simple you think it is. Let me tell you, that would be a mistake. Every company I deal with has lost so much money over we can't afford an IT department. And then they spend 10 times as much as it would have cost them to pay the IT department to oversee and pay for the thing, right? Like, you would not believe how many times I deal with places that are like, we only pay $500 a month for this. How could we have afforded IT? We're like, you needed 30 minutes of IT to tell you to only spend $10 a month. And that 30 minutes certainly wasn't $500 a month. This would have paid for itself in the first 72 hours or something like that. Like the amount that people are off. I once had a place that refused to listen to IT for a number of years. And when they finally listened, it turned out that their bill that should have been $50 was $1,400. They were losing almost $1,400 every month, and they had already paid for the IT advice. They didn't want to listen to the advice. They felt that listening would be too expensive, so they didn't want to take the time to have the discussion. They actually said, "No, we're not going to consider the numbers. We're sure it won't be good." And then they realized they were paying however much that is, 28 times what they should have been paying. Like, really foolish stuff. You see this all the time. So trust me, the reason you talk to IT first, actual IT, not a salesperson, right? When I say IT, I never mean something that's anti-IT. I mean IT, right? So I'm being honest. Most people, when they say IT, they're talking about someone who doesn't work in IT but is actually a salesperson. The reason you have IT is to protect you from salespeople, right? That's not exactly the reason you have IT, but it might as well be, right? Like, it's like one of the biggest things. Because without actual IT oversight, technical oversight, the ability of salespeople to skew information and send you down rabbit holes that seem reasonable for outrageous amounts of money is so high. You've got to have those trained people who understand the scope of the problems to say, okay, that's reasonable, except he's leaving out, that this is free, or that this is easy. You don't need this, or, oh, here's the best of this thing. You say, well, I got to have the best. And then later when you're like, why did you buy this thing for $100,000? Hey, because it's the best. Yeah, it's the best of a thing you don't need and that we'd be better shutting off than keeping. But I already paid for it. No, it doesn't matter. It's still better for the business to shut it off. We say that all the time. Like, the amount IT people, by salespeople who call themselves IT, is so outrageously high, and people just don't see it until it's way too late. And then there's this embarrassment factor. So let's get past that, although some of that is a good background. So this particular client that we were dealing with is tricky because they were a client in two different areas. On one side, they were an IT client, and on the other side, they were a web hosting client. On the IT side, they've been a client for a long time. On the web hosting, for about 3 years. On the IT side, right, as the IT company, not resellers, actual IT, that's what I do. We oversaw everything. So we oversaw their security, their spending, their technology stack, their technology decisions, their vendor relationships, their backups, their continuity of business, all those kinds of things, the speed of their website, all those things that are just normal IT, we did. And so if they were to make a wildly crazy decision, they would either go through IT and we would say, whoa, that's a crazy decision, don't do that. Or they would have to override us and be like, okay, we are knowingly not talking to these guys and we're going to intentionally take on IT responsibility from them and go do something crazy, which they never did. They would always come to us and we'd be like, that's crazy, don't do that. Right? We had lots of conversations like, that's crazy, don't do that. And they kept moving services to us because we were consistently doing a good job for them. And they were like, wow, you guys are great. And then one day, So even as the IT company, right, they have a person who oversees the relationship, and that person screwed up really badly and got in trouble with the owner. And instead of saying, I made a mistake, she said, I don't know what she actually said. He says, she tells us you screwed up. We said, well, that's funny because it's not a thing we're dealing with. It's not an IT thing. You purchased a product from another vendor. They didn't deliver it. We did not choose the vendor. When we found out that your team had interfaced with a vendor, chosen a vendor, and that vendor didn't deliver what they needed to do, we jumped in and said, we can help because we can talk to the vendor faster than you. We can converse with them. We can get this fixed. The vendor wasn't trying to screw them over. It was purely an accident, right? On everyone's piece here, it was an accident. There was at no point should the owner have been upset, first of all, right? It was just accidents. These things happen, and none of it was super impactful. So that's the first thing. Like, this was nothing. But then, supposedly, according to the owner, who lies up and down to us, so who knows what actually happened, right? So we know. She says you made this mistake. We're like, well, you know that that's impossible because we're not the vendor, right? Like as the owner of the company who selected these vendors and put them in place, you know we're not this vendor. We have no control over the situation. You also know that we're not the ones who engaged them. We're not the ones who coordinated with them. We're not the ones who made the mistake. We are the ones who voluntarily jumped in and helped when your team was in over their heads, which is not an indictment of them being incompetent. There's no reason for them to have needed to be involved. They have us to jump in and do that stuff. We're technical. They're not. Like, it's fine. So we jumped in, but we should have gotten a call that said, I know it's kind of your job, but we really thank you for going above and beyond and doing an excellent job and not being a vendor who made a mistake, and instead being a vendor who helped when another vendor made a mistake, and you helped keep our team from wasting their time doing stuff that they're not particularly good at, and bailed them out when they needed it. That's what should have been said. Instead, they came back and said, I'm told that this is all your fault, even though we were able to explain that that was impossible. It's not that we don't make mistakes, right? Of course we do, but this wasn't possibly one of our mistakes. It's like you went to your chef and you say, you screwed up the oil in my car when you changed the oil, so you're fired. And the chef goes, you realize I work in the kitchen, I've never been in your car, and I don't have the keys. Right? Oh, well, but the person who manages my house said it was you working on the car, or you fed the people when they were working on the car and you should have known better, so you're fired. And they're happy with the people who screwed up the car, no complaints about them. And they're happy with the person who lied about who did the thing, no problem there. They just randomly picked a party who jumped in and catered for the people who were scrambling to fix it after they screwed up the engine. That's who they're going to fire. That's basically what happened. So they call us and we're firing you, and we say, because we have all these problems. They said, what are you talking about, all these problems? They said, well, in the meeting they had with you to talk about the problems. We said, what are you talking about? There was no meeting. Well, I was told there was a meeting. We're like, well, there wasn't. And so we had this call about we're being fired. They didn't have a single reason that pertained to us or anything we had done, and just fired us, which is fine. Like, it's a toxic environment, as you can imagine. So, it sucks losing clients, but when it's the worst possible clients, it sucks a lot less, right? So fine. So that was a few months ago. But importantly, some of the things that we did as IT is manage, like I said, we oversee decisions and vendors. We make sure that crazy things aren't happening. We make sure that smart decisions are being made. We make sure that there's backups and data retention and all that kind of stuff. Even when it's not our responsibility, we do that stuff because we're IT. And instead they said, okay, this person who fired you, the person who I'm saying, right, the owner claimed this person, we're making them the head of IT, and now they're the IT manager, and they've already hired another vendor, and they're like, well, you should have told us these things weren't your fault, before we hired another vendor. We're like, but you just told us just now, literally on the call we're on, it's the first time we're being notified of it, and you already hired that other vendor months ago. So what the hell's going on, right? Like, don't lie to us, just say, we're embarrassed. We don't want to have to keep facing you. Right? Like, that's literally the only thing we've come up with as a reason. It was at a moment where the relationship was we've done such a good job. We've had so few complaints, as in zero, nothing negative. Every meeting was, you know, they'd be frustrated and we'd be like, okay, so you're frustrated about things your team did? Because none of this, like all the items you're bringing us aren't things we have control over. This is your team. And they're like, oh yeah, oh yes, everything with your team is perfect. Meeting after meeting after meeting. And then all of a sudden the owner just fires us on the, like, as a result of the best reaction from us, right? We bail them out, and that was the, oh gosh, we exposed too much of that. We don't know what we're doing to this company. We got to go. So it's important to note, they took the person who had been promoted. This is the Dilbert Principle, right? They promoted the person who was least competent into the position where they did the least work. However, when you do that to management, where you're managing people, putting incompetent people in a management position has the potential to minimize their damage. That's why the Dilbert Principle has always promoted that. Not that it's good, but it's a theory. And in the case of IT, it doesn't work that way. You never promote incompetence in IT because you're putting the people in a position where they must know. You're not minimizing the damage, you're maximizing the damage because they're not managing people who can fix themselves, right? You put a bad manager over good people, the good people will keep working in most cases. Sure, some are going to quit. As long as that manager doesn't get paid more than them, right? Pay them less. They're the promoted for incompetence. If you really feel the need to keep incompetent people, which they do in this case, so that's fine, right? You don't want to make incompetent people starve either, but don't keep promoting them. Put them someplace like grooming. I don't know, like pets, like groom pets, something you can't actually do, but they would probably kill the pets. I wouldn't trust them around living things. I don't know. So they do all this and they basically take off all the controls by getting rid of the IT company and bringing in resellers. This is important. They didn't bring in an IT company to take over. They brought in someone who sells things, and they're nice people. We've talked to them, like, no, nothing against them, but it's a completely different thing. We're IT, we oversee everything. All those things, all the things you don't know about, all the things you don't understand, we do it all. There isn't line items. It isn't like, well, they do this, but not this. There's none of that. We do everything. Every single thing under IT and loads of things that aren't. Marketing and sales, all kinds of staffing, business process outsourcing. We do a million things that are ancillary to IT as well, but anything that falls under IT, we do. Literally everything. And so they brought in a company who has line items, just a card, right? And they do this item and email, and they do Windows desktop management, and they do like whatever. Like you can pick your things, and they do a lot of things, and I'm sure they do a fine job with them. But they don't do a whole bunch of the things that this company does, including the specific applications that they use, web hosting, phones, lots of just, companies have lots of things. So now, because they didn't bring in an IT company, they brought in salespeople who are just there to sell them some items that they have, and they took a person who knows nothing about computers, like not even basic middle school competency. And I mean that literally. I'm not trying to be like, this person's so dumb, they're like a middle schooler. No. They don't know what a website is, right? The average 12-year-old can tell you what a website is with a pretty good degree of understanding. This person has no idea, right? So, and no idea of business. Like, you don't have to know anything. You don't have to have computer literacy to have a really, like a CEO. The only thing they need to do is hire a trustworthy IT professional to oversee IT, and their problems are solved, right? Maybe they won't get the best results, but they'll get really good results. That's all it takes. But if you take on that responsibility yourself and know nothing about it, there's two problems. One, you don't know anything about IT, and two, clearly you don't know anything about business, right? Common sense would protect you from that. Oh, let's take the most critical, most dangerous thing we have, and let's put a person into that role who has no clue, but is willing to do it anyway. Oh my gosh, even if that's yourself, that's a crazy thing to do. Absolutely crazy. So, because you can't even trust yourself to have warned yourself that you don't know what you're doing. Like, it's crazy. So this person is now in charge of everything IT. She doesn't want to have any responsibility. So she's going to lean on this new reseller that they brought in, right? And she expects them to take over from us. But there's a big gap here that we know, right? And that is that they're resellers, not IT. So they don't oversee anything. They don't take responsibility for anything because it's not their job. They're there to sell you desktops, and they'll plug them in and stuff for you. Like, they're a value-added reseller, but they're a reseller. They're there to ship you more boxes. That's it. That's their job, and that's the understanding. And that tells you you can't rely on their decision-making. And it's not hidden. They're completely open about it. They're nice people, just a different job role than you had before. And there's nothing wrong with this. If you have good internal IT with all the knowledge and oversight and controls and all that stuff, you can use VARs directly if you are not emotionally played by them easily, and that works okay. Right? It's a little bit of an odd relationship. Why would you bother in that case? But it can work. But they're acting In the past, they had an IT company that protected them from their bad decision making and made loads of decisions to protect them proactively because they paid us to just take care of things. So data protection, we just did, right? Backups, we just did. Security, we just did. We didn't go to them and say, hey, we'd like to secure your environment. Here's what it's going to cost. No, we just did it. So their environment was being secured. Their data was being backed up. Like all this stuff was, all these oversight. The vendors were being managed. Protections were in place. So this new company, we know a few things. One, like I said, they're just resellers, so they have no responsibility to oversee IT. They don't believe that they're the new IT company in the way that we were. And they know nothing about some of these things, like web hosting, to them isn't one of their rate items. It's not on their card. They know nothing about it. They don't know how it works. They have a loose idea of some vendors who offer the service, but they don't know how to interact with them. Their own website, nothing special. Like, I don't know how it's hosted. I didn't look into it, but not impressive. There's all these things. It's like, okay, so they would hire us to do this. And they needed to, which we'll get to. So this is just a company, if they were engaged for this, they would turn around and hire a company like us to do this on their behalf. That's just the standard, nothing wrong with that. So the bigger problem is that all the responsibility for the things that we actually did, backups, safety, security, meeting professional negligence standards, all those kinds of things now fall to this completely untrained, clueless, and utterly illiterate manager that they have. So that manager then decides, okay, we're going to move web hosting to this new company. Originally, when they fired us from being IT, they said, but we're certainly not turning off other services like web hosting, right? And we know that they didn't because they kept interacting with us as their host. Like they would send us emails, we would discuss it, like they used us as the vendor. It was just this IT portion that this other company took over. So it was very discreet and explicit, both that they said they're not replacing the web hosting and that they kept paying for it, which is great, and that they kept using us actively. It wasn't like, we paid it and didn't realize it, and it kept going to you, but we didn't realize it. There was none of that. There was very clear they knew. And so on Friday, when this all happened, they sent me an email in the morning. Well, they sent the team, but I saw it. And it said that we would like to provide, and it was very specific, FTP access to this company. So we responded. So this tells us a bunch of things. One, that they know nothing about computers and computer literacy, like you never use FTP, and any service that offers FTP you don't use, right? FTP is wildly insecure, super unprofessional, huge red flag to anyone who has any technical abilities, and there's no reason for it, right? So if you have a web host that's offering FTP, you know they don't have a clue what they're doing, and you need to really run away. It's a huge red flag from the very beginning. So that they're asking for FTP means they don't have any IT oversight involved. And I realize everybody's going to say, but my web hosting uses FTP. Well, now you've been warned. If your IT didn't notice that was a problem, now don't get me wrong. You go to your IT guy and say, do you see something wrong with this? They might say, look, yeah, we all know that it's incredibly unprofessional, but every random Joe Schmo web host does this. I don't know why. I'll tell you why. But Scott can tell you, because I know, I've worked in this industry. But they all do this, so we don't say anything because everyone does it. Like, it's like fax machines at your doctor. The doctor knows that it's illegal. Everyone knows it's insecure. Everyone knows they're exposing your data and violating every intent that HIPAA could possibly have, and yet they just do it anyway. Why? Because everyone does, and everyone looks the other way, because it's accepted to be unprofessional and insecure in that instance for no good reason, right? Some supporting of some old company thing that everyone got paid to look the other way. So constantly web hosts do this, and the real question is why. And I can give a long rant, but it's when you have a web host that is buying a prepackaged, I'm a web hosting company box, there's a specific company that sells a horrible hosting package that allows you to stand up a web host with no technical expertise, no quality, no oversight, no engineering, no ability to support it, and they will let you just turnkey and start a web hosting company with basically no overhead. They do this with FTP. So you see this in people asking for your FTP information or asking for your cPanel information or expecting there to be email in web hosting, which shouldn't go together, makes no sense. All that, those are artifacts of people using this product and are flags that, oh, you've got people using web hosting. There's no such thing as a good web host with those artifacts, right? All good web hosts And the reality is that normally you should host with your own internal IT, not go out to a company. And I can give a long explanation if people are interested as to the math and why that's true. But there's really no case. Don't get me wrong. If anybody wants to move their web hosting to us, let me know. Like, that's fantastic, but that's not the point. If you have IT, they can do it internally basically for free and get amazing results with a lot of control. But if you do want a web host who knows what they're doing and offers a completely different level of service, as if we were your internal IT department, that's what we do, right? And for those who are wondering, we're wildly expensive at a little under $20 a month. And I say this to people, and some people are like, that is expensive. And I'm like, yeah, we're super premium. We offer the best, right? Like, we are seriously amazing web hosts, screaming fast. It's really good. And you can actually talk to engineers, and it's our own infrastructure. We're not reselling stuff. However, we also know it's a premium price. Like it is what it is. And if your internal IT can do it, then they're going to do an amazing job, and it's going to cost like nothing. So you can do it for like free. Or if you just don't care about your website, you can do it like for free on stuff you do yourself with no particular effort, but it's not going to be fast. If you want someone and we actually do the full stack. We oversee your DNS and your front end caches, all the things that normal web hosts don't tell you need, and just throw you to the wolves. They're like, well, your IT department should know we're only the web host. They're doing all this. They don't give it to us. We don't have right? We take control of all that through the entire stack, which makes it very different. So the fact that we cost that much, actually, we're not that expensive as a premium. If you were to go to a normal web host, I'll just pick on someone random, a small orange, right, and go to web host with them, you would still need to hire a company like us or go to your internal IT to do a bunch of the other functions. But they don't tell you that, and most people don't know that. And so if you don't engage your IT to oversee it, you often miss those things. So we know from her asking for this that she thought, one, that we were some unprofessional, completely incompetent service, but she knew who we were. So that was really weird. But it told us that she knew we were the web host. She thought we were the holder of her data. It also told us that she was trying to get the data for her other company, which is weird because months ago she had already done that and gotten them access, which was already weird that she had asked for it because she was the administrator of the site anyway and always had the access. Not only did she always have the access as the administrator, she's also the person who gave us the data for the website. So she is the origination source of the website, or her and her team. I don't know if it was her personally, but so they had the original data. We were the copy. Which is normal, right? You don't expect your web host to have be the origination source of that data. It'd just be weird. So that's where it came from. So she already had the data, and she was the administrator for the site. And then when they asked for the credentials for them, instead of her going in and just making them, she had us make them, which is a little bit weird. It was kind of like a shot over the bow, I think, of, oh, the new IT guys, they're getting access. Your time's limited. Like, whatever, who cares? So they had done that. So we knew that she, as the IT manager, had always had access both to the original data and she could pull from our hosting at any moment, and should have been, right? Because she's the IT manager, it's her job to pull the data and make sure she has backups and oversee all that stuff like we used to do before she took over. Then they have this new IT company, and she also gave them the power to do that. So if she wanted them to do that, she could coordinate with them, and they could do it. So they had everything they needed, and we verified they had everything they needed. So we know they confirmed they had months ago. Okay. So now they ask for a different form, and this makes sense in some ways. Like, I work in this space. I know that the way they had access is less convenient under some circumstances compared to getting it the way they asked for. So I gave a long explanation of why you don't ask for FTP, because that signals that you're only talking about an unprofessional thing. And I gave a big explanation. Here's what you should be doing when moving to another web host. We did a lot of information to protect them, and it was very specifically not just how to get files, how to permanently protect yourself, all these things to deal with issues like what if you were to shut off your web hosting and what would protect you. Like, we gave all that information in the morning about using Git repositories and everything. So, and we said, have your IT team, whether it's the internal ones or the ones you hire, provide us with Git repo information, and then we'll push the data up that way if you want that type of copy. You already have data. I didn't repeat that, but you already have all the data. You don't need any of this. But if there's a convenient way or an automated way or whatever, great. Here's how you do it. So we gave them a lot. We went way out of our way to protect them with extra information, guidelines, everything. Then there was some bizarre confusion, and they're like, just get the files over to this other IT company. And we're like, they've already had the files. There's some weird discussion. But so we know in the morning. They knew we were the web host, no question. And they were thinking that the new company didn't have the data yet. Then after about an hour or two, they suddenly, copying in the other IT company, say, no, I think they're already the web host and they have the files. I said, well, I have no knowledge of any of that. We were not told we were not going to be the web host. This is news to me. And if they pulled the files or don't pull the files, we have no way to know, right? Because that's a backup. I don't know what they're storing. I have no idea. I don't know if you've kept your originals. I don't know if you've deleted them. I have no information here. I know nothing about moving host. I know nothing about who's taken a backup or gotten a copy. I only know that you have had access in the past, meaning you always, and then additional access for more people recently. I know that we made sure you had that and you confirmed that you had everything you need. That's it. I can't give you more information than that. I physically can't give you more. It's impossible, let alone whether I should, or it's my business, or it's legal, or anything like that. It's not physically possible. So there you go. She said, oh, well, I think they have it. I said, okay, well, if you think they have it, right, then absolutely, it's the end of the month. It was the 31st. You've already paid for August, but if you want your money back and you want to shut it all down, if you're confident, I know nothing about this. You can just turn it off today, give you your money back, and you don't have to pay anything instead of writing out another one, right? And they're like, oh, we're not sure. Okay, so let us get back to you. Don't shut it off. She originally said shut it off. I said, really? And then they said, no, wait, hold on. I said, okay. So they did give us an order to shut it down, but then rescinded it right away. They wanted to double check. She said she was going to go check. She said, I'm going to go talk to this other company and make sure they have what they need. About 2 hours go by. She comes back and says, confirmed, we have everything we need. Shut it off immediately. Give us the refund. We said, okay, confirming, shutting it off immediately. Here's your refund. Gave the refund, shut down their account. That was it. We, wondering, of course, what was going to happen, went and checked, and the site was gone. Now, I left out that the other company had jumped in earlier in the day and shown that they had full access to control everything. So we knew that they had it because we had given it to them, but they could have lost it or something. They confirmed that they are actively in control of all the web hosting. So they could do anything they wanted. There's no way for us to know whether we should shut the site down or not. We have no visibility, but we do have all the knowledge that there is no way they haven't had access to the data. They have confirmed that they got the data. They confirmed that they knew what they were doing, and they confirmed that they had full control of all the systems, and there was nothing left for us to do. So we crossed our T's, we dotted our I's, we went so far out of our way to make sure we didn't miss anything. We weren't hurting them in any way. And we warned them, do you want us to shut it down? We'll give you a refund, but we don't know anything about this. And they were like, yes, confirmed, to shut it down. So the site went down. Of course it went down, right? The next day, we started getting communications of, we don't know what a web host is. We thought it was some completely different thing. We're like, we had this discussion. We go through email chains that show where you were told that wasn't true. Over the years, you've been educated on this. That's why you hired us in the first place, because you knew that. So that's not an excuse. Your team made this decision based on these facts. The new guy, it turns out, then eventually contacts us and says, I was never contacted. The company that confirmed had no contact whatsoever. They had no idea they were going to shut it down, had no idea that they thought they were a web host, aren't a web host, don't know anything about web hosting, had nothing. They had no copy. They didn't know they should have a copy. They didn't know they should be managing it because it was this person's job to do all that. Holy cow, completely, oh my gosh, they were as blindsided as us, only they're now on the hook with them claiming they had a copy. We're actively their web host. We're responsible for everything. We're overseeing the backups. We're protecting it and all that. Great. But they don't know what to do. They have no idea. The owner of the company is completely refusing to respond to any emails, any calls, nothing. No response whatsoever. The person who caused the outage, the person who intentionally, because there's no way to read this in any other way. It was an intentional shutdown of the website. She was told that this would bring down the site. She was told no one had checked it. She checked with no one to take it over. She was the person who knew that we were the web host. Like, if you go back to the chain, there is zero gray area. She was 100% aware that she was shutting down the website on the company. She was sabotaging this. It's a clinic, right? And fine. So She then emails everyone, and the angry thing, it says, you will only, remember, this is not a client anymore. This is a person who canceled their account, already got their money back. It says, you know, you are only to speak to this third party and deal with stuff. We said, okay. But when we spoke to that third party, we said, so you don't know what you need to do, and you don't have access to the things you need. For us to even discuss this further requires having a contract. You have two choices. You can get authorization to be the authorizing party for this previous customer and make them a customer again, of course, paying up front because we're concerned. Or you can hire us to be your consultant, and we can handle all the technical stuff because we know you don't have this technical expertise, which is fine because it's not a thing they do, right? They're being thrown under the bus on this. But we'll take over because that's the thing we do. We provide backing for other companies. If anyone wants to start their own MSP, for example, call us. We're an MSP builder. We can spin up a new MSP for you just like that. That's what we do, right? So if you wanted us to back you and help you guys out, hire us, whatever. So he's like, yeah, I'm not authorized to contract you on behalf of you, right? We're like, we didn't think so, but those are your options, right? We're not a vendor to you or them. So the fact that she's telling us to talk to you, all we can do is tell you, yes, she intends to shut down the site. She verified she had the backup. She's had it for years. You've had it for months. And she said she had everything you needed. Turn it off immediately. Give me a refund. Sever all communications. She then responded and said, do not communicate with me again. And then acted like she wanted a copy of the data, which why would we have a copy of her data? She has the copy of the data. She confirmed she had the copy of the data. We were told to make it go away. So that's where it was. Now, what's interesting is, remember, they have complete control. If there was any IT person with any scope whatsoever, I'm not saying that the people that are there are not excellent. Well, I'm just going to give an example. Printer techs or Windows desktop tech. You could be an excellent Windows desktop tech and know nothing about websites. That happens. It's a real thing. That may be the case. They may have excellent people like that. So I'm not in any way making a claim that they don't have great people. What I'm saying is that the people that they have can't possibly have any scope outside of the one task that they do, which is very common. That's why people work for VARs. If you have no scope, but you know how to do one task, VARs don't do scope. They don't have to. They don't have to oversee things. That's for IT departments, right? So it's very common for VARs to be able to do the tasks that they do very well, but not to be able to advise you when that task makes sense, or to think outside the box, or to do a slightly different task. They just repeat the process that they know, which has value. So that's fine. So had they had a single person with any IT scope, if they had a CIO, obviously, any IT manager, any general administrator, any person with a passing interest in general IT, and I truly mean passing interest, they knew they had all the tools, all the access, all the things they needed to fix the website more or less instantly. They know that there's the data out there. They have the original data and they have copies of the data. They have it. We know they have it. Right? We can't actually prove that they have it. Actually, I believe I can. But we know that they had access to it and they confirmed that they had it. We know they're the only ones who should have it. We also know they have a way to put something up. We also know that they have resources to do this. If this was my company, the same thing happened, and truly we lost all the data. Let's imagine that scenario. We actually lost all the data. There's nothing we can do. The amount of time to get the website fixed to a point where at least customers would know we were still in business and we hadn't completely failed is probably about between 30 and 60 minutes. We would probably take longer because we would stop and think about it. It's not that critical for us. But in reality, it would be about an hour. We would have not a copy of the website up. We would have a different website up. That is all it takes to get something basic together, hosted. They have everything. They showed they were ready to make the money in the screenshots they showed us. They just don't have the technical expertise or the authorization to pull the trigger. And so in whatever combination of idiocy they have going on, it's now been really 5 days. And it's not just that the site is down and they haven't figured out where they stored the data. It's also that they haven't figured out how to deal with that fact, which should be so basic. So basic. You don't need an IT manager for that. You just need a receptionist that has a passion interest of computers, or an owner who has any friends, or, which, trust me, the owner of this company does not have friends. It is the whole scenario is just absurd. It is such an easy fix. Had they had the slightest competence, or even just been nice people, none of this would have happened. Had they been nice people, we would honestly have not given them the offer to cancel. We just said, look, don't cancel. There's no way you're prepared for this, right? but they're not nice people. We were not going to have a further conversation. That's the only thing we wanted, was for them to go away. They went away in a really dramatic fashion, right? We didn't want to have to talk to them anymore after the lies and stuff. They were so toxic, so just straight up mean, like very personal, very mean, just to cover their own asses, it seems like. So we had no love lost. We just like, please stop being our customer. You've confirmed you're good. Go away now. And they're like, yes, we can go away. And I know what happened. I know that the IT manager got into a position where she had claimed to the owner that she had everything in hand. She had made some claims. She said they had transferred. She had put it in writing, right? Oh, we know we have a copy. We know that they transferred the thing. She couldn't go check with someone. She couldn't back down at that point without exposing that she had made it all up. So her back was against the wall. And when she got the offer to give the money back, and the owner was copied on the option to get his money back, if she didn't take the money back, he was definitely going to go, well, what do you mean you didn't take the money back? Why'd you throw away money? You confirmed you had everything. Clearly you're on top of it, right? So she was forced into a position where she had to go with her lies and throw away the service and then get belligerent, because what else could she do? She was screwed. But it is what it is. But the owner said he has utmost confidence in her and anything she says is true. So there he is. We did offer to try to look into it, but they refused to talk to us about opening a contract. So we're powerless. It's not our problem. It's not our position. As they say in crazy circles, it's not my circus, not my monkeys, but it does make a very good story. And I'll keep updating you guys on it, because I'm sure the drama will continue. But it's hilarious, the amount that we went through. And we're like, just have the owner call us. Like that's what we need. We need the owner to call us and talk this through. And you know, maybe it's just paying us to tell you how to fix the website. If that's what you need, fine, let's have that discussion. But we're not going to have it, you know, with a third party that we're not getting paid to support. And we're not going to have it with this person who told us not to contact her. We're not allowed to contact her. We have no option here. And we don't know that she still works there. Had she been my employee, she'd have been fired. Obviously. Any competent owner would have fired her. So if we give any credibility to the owner of the company, which is a joke, but it's our job to give the benefit of the doubt in a legal sense. If we give him any benefit of the doubt, the assumption is she must have been fired for intentionally sabotaging. He read that chain and had a single brain cell left. Again, a struggle. If he looked at that, he'd be like, oh yeah, she clearly knew she didn't do these things. They were clearly indemnifying themselves. She had tons of warning that she was doing something wrong and had, for all intents and purposes, admitted she was doing it wrong in the call. The other vendor backed up that it was all lies, that she had lied to everybody, and she took it down for fun. Well, you fire those people. That she told us that someone else was authorized, that is such a chain of, we don't know that she works there. She hasn't been our client. We don't know whether she was fired or not. We only know she should have been. We don't know if they're still using this third party. We only know that they can't do the job they need. They should have been replaced, at least in this particular role. If they're nice people, don't fire them, right? Just hire someone, you know, like us, not us, please, but someone like us who can do the job. Yeah, we can't work off of her telling us to not contact her and saying, yeah, talk to these people, because it doesn't work that way, right? We need an authorized party to authorize a contract, and then we can have a conversation about who's allowed to get what and talk about what and get trained on what or whatever. Absolutely nuts. So that's the drama. It's actually been a lot of fun. We've been really looking forward to unloading these people. My entire team is having like a party. This is the most toxic, worst customer we've had in so many years. It's so bad, but they were in but we're friends with the owner situation where it made everyone be like, okay, we got to take care of them. And, you know, there was all this like preying on, you know, personal feelings and trying to make us feel bad for these terrible toxic people. And every single person dreaded supporting them. They were not paying enough to justify the overhead at all. They drained the company spiritually. And now they're gone. Life is good. So that is the story. On to my next rant. Boy, I hope my camera doesn't overheat. I've been using it a lot today, but it is cooling down now. We're in the evening. And so my last thing is, so I was told that someone actually reached out. Someone took the effort of watching the show. Now I know, look, at this point, I'm pretty well known. My audience knows that I'm pretty well known here in Nicaragua. So people in the United States who are tasked with, you know, messing with people who are in Nicaragua, I'm on that radar. We know that this is true, and it's an expectation, and I'm glad that YouTube filters a lot of stuff. But because we have the contact on there for info@relocatenicaragua.com, a lot of great people have reached out. We're actually quite busy with that. It's fantastic. And just a quick note, please be patient. And if you're looking for services with us, give us lots of lead time. We're a very small team and we are extremely busy because we are ramping up and people are coming on quickly. And so we have a lot of processes that we're trying to get together, and just the communications can be rough because it only takes one little thing. Like tomorrow we're heading out to do a tour. That means multiple people from my team are tied up for days at a time. Maintaining constant communications is very difficult because we're not big enough to have dedicated communications people yet. So please just be very patient. Give us lots of lead time. Don't try you can try it. But if you do we're coming next week, can you help? We're going to do our best, but that's very hard for us because it takes us time to communicate and figure out who's going to be on the schedule and who's actually paying. A lot of people have questions and are like, oh yeah, we're not really looking to pay for service, which is cool. But we have to work with paying customers, figure out who that is, have the payments happen, do all that kind of stuff. It's a business, right? But we're a tiny business and a new one. So please be patient. But anyway, so someone took the time to look at my thing and sent me, and this is very leading, right? And you can kind of see these coming. If you start doing stuff in Nicaragua, you're going to get this a bit, and you get these very set up questions. You can tell that they're coming from like a bot farm. But they're humans, I guarantee. But they've been trained on ways to lead the questions. And I say this a lot because you don't understand how much I see this. But this one was very direct and very effortful, I think. But aren't you concerned about, and then brings up completely bogus things. But this aren't you concerned about is a very good way to convince people something might be wrong. Like it's this thing is wrong, and trying to make you think that the thing you're getting wrong is your degree of worry about it. For example, aren't you concerned that with all the meteors hitting the Earth that you'll be wiped out in an extinction event? The thing that they want you to think about is, shouldn't you be worried? And you say, oh, I should be more worried about that. Wow, with all these meteors, what are the chances they won't hit me? The thing that they're hiding is that the trick is trying to convince you, not that you're at high risk, but that lots of meteors are hitting the Earth. They're not, right? That's not a thing. Like they could. No one's saying they can't. The point is they're not hitting all the time. They're not hitting with frequency. They're not something you can worry about. They're also not something you can protect against, right? So this whole concept is you mention one thing removed as a fact and then get people to question their reaction to that fact. And that's a way to trick the mind into thinking the fact is just established because they treated it as established. They didn't say, I've read that meteors hit the Earth a lot. If that's true, would you be worried about it? Then you'd say, well, it's not true, right? Who's heard of that? You would know if a meteor hit with twice. Wow, we would know. Right? Everyone would be talking about it and a whole bunch of people would be dead, right? There would be how many people died from meteors this year number but there isn't, right? There's COVID numbers. There's car accident numbers. There's those kinds of things. Heart attack numbers, not meteor strike numbers. If you want to go to the meteor strike website, it's going to be 0, right? This many millennium with 0 meteor deaths, right? Big number. So that is a way. So they led with this, aren't you concerned? And then gave me a list of just complete crap. And so I responded, hoping that they weren't one of these government-paid shills to come on and try to convince foreigners who are here that there's some fear that they're not witnessing. But it's a bit crazy. So I go, wow, so you're saying all these things as if they're fact. That is clearly an attempt to be leading, which tells me you don't really believe them. You need to look at your sources for this stuff because I'm here in the country. So one, obviously I'm not worried about them. That's why I'm here. But that would be assuming they were true. I'm here and can observably say that none of these are true, or those that are true, but not in that context or not in the way that you're saying. And, cars are super dangerous there. Well, we drive all the time, and the statistics say they're roughly equal to the United States in danger. We have very similar traffic statistics within less than 1%. Yeah, we're worse here, but barely, right? And that's unfortunate. We should improve that. And we could by simply requiring seatbelts a whole lot more. Magically, we would pass the US just from that one thing, since we don't use them currently. Don't get me started on seatbelts. But there's a very skewed thing in Nicaragua about people are afraid of wearing seatbelts or helmets, but are happy to wear a face mask against COVID while riding a bicycle in the middle of the countryside. you can make any argument you want, pro or con, on COVID and face masks. Like, that's not the point. The point is everybody agrees that if you're on a bicycle in the middle of a field around no people, that wearing a face mask is detrimental to your health, because there's no upsides, but there has to be some downsides, like microbes near your face or not getting enough oxygen, whatever. I'm not saying it's terrible, but it's dumb, right? But you see that, or you did. Now you don't see it so much. During COVID, you see that all the time. People with no helmet put a face mask. Like, seriously, even the most vehement face mask supporters would still agree, I've never heard of one that wouldn't, that if you had to choose between the face mask and a helmet, the helmet every time. The helmet protects against this huge percentage of things, and the face mask, in theory, against a small percentage. Lots of arguments to be made both ways, but the one argument you can't make is that the helmet doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of that goes on, right? Bad risk decision making. But that's true anywhere. I feel it's worse here. Some things. I'd love to get an education program, but it doesn't affect you as an expat, right? Just if you wear a seatbelt, you were safer than in the U.S. But whatever, I digress. So it's not things like that. So he's like trying to lead. I'm like, so I went through. These things are not true. I'm here on the ground. I can tell you, those are wildly crazy theories that are being made up by media that is written for people who have never traveled and won't. Because even people who have just been outside the U.S. but not to Nicaragua, these don't seem plausible. These are very only plausible in American propaganda context, right? So I went through the thing. And then his response is really where, like, obviously he was leading me, but I did my best to be like, no, you've been fed the same lines as everyone else. You shouldn't repeat them because none of this is founded in anything. And he came back with, you've been brainwashed and all this stuff, and like getting really belligerent and very offensive, right? Which, fine, whatever. So the interesting thing, though, is the brainwashing bit. I want to go into this for a second. It's an interesting point that it's not said in exactly this way, but it is often said, right? Americans are taught that anyone who doesn't agree with American propaganda, and remember the United States under Obama, I say this a lot because it's a really big deal. Under Obama, the United States authorized itself, it gave itself permission to no longer tell the truth to the American people. So nothing coming from the government to the American people has to be honest, and you can't trust any of it. Not that you should trust things your government says in general. Good governments can be pretty crappy. So some wariness of governments and what they say is important. But the United States has no legal responsibility to ever tell you anything true. So if they say you have the right to free speech, they don't need to actually back that up. They can tell you that you have those rights, and whether or not you actually do is something you can only find out if you discover it. If you go to court, you prove that you were able to get away with something. But they can say you have the right to, drive drunk, do so, and they arrest you, and you go, but they said, and they say, yeah, that's propaganda. Sorry, your fault for believing the government. You say, well, where do I get the facts? And I'm like, there's not facts available in the United States. Legally, you don't have the right. You do not have the right to facts in the United States. You don't get to know what your laws are. You can find out, but it's only by getting lucky. It's not your right to know, right? It's not that they're kept from you, concretely. It's just that you'll never be 100% sure which things are true because nothing has to be. So it's a very common thing for Americans who have gone through this. I hear we had a huge palm frond fall while I was seconds after I videoed this morning, and I think I hear another one about to go. If the camera suddenly flips around, it's me trying to catch it. This very American thing is to take this incredibly skewed, incredibly racist, and we're not talking Nicaragua context, could be anything, right? Afghanistan, Russia, Ukraine, South Africa, Latin-speaking countries, Vietnam, Korea, you name it, China, right? There's an American agenda, and whether the things are mostly true, kind of true, not true at all, that's subjective. But it's not really subjective. It's individual to the thing being said. It's subjective to the situation as to which ones are propaganda, which ones are not. But the point being that when Americans want you to not listen to any outside source, not think critically, there is a standard go-to of questioning your government, questioning normally wackadoodle independent media, and questioning propaganda and questioning a pro-US agenda as automatically brainwashing. It is a go-to response of people who know that they are wrong, right? You don't say you're brainwashed under normal circumstances, right? If I find someone who has misinformation, I may say, I think you have a bad source of information. I think you may have gotten into a group of bad information sources that are feeding you a consistent series of misinformation, things like that. I have never once started off with, I think you've been brainwashed, right? That's a weird accusation. It exists in my context. I've never heard it from anywhere except this very American trained way of attacking people when you know you're wrong, right? So if someone ever comes out and says, I think you've been brainwashed, be prepared. Immediately think, oh my gosh, I bet they're American and they're admitting in their own minds that they knew they were wrong. This is a thing they're trained to say to trigger an emotional response from me because they're backed into a corner. They know I've got the facts. Oh, so he says this. So I respond. He says, and of course it's not worth responding, and I blacklisted him immediately, so I won't know what he says. There's no reason to ever listen to toxic people. When you get people who are doing that stuff, battery died there. So there's no need to deal with toxic people like that. Once you know they're lying, once you know they're setting you up, just blacklist and walk away. But I did respond with a really important point, and I want to make it here because there's a lot of people who watch this, and potentially this is an important thing to understand, is yes, it's always possible to be brainwashed, to be tricked by some marketing or something. So one of the things that's interesting is we don't really get any of that here, so I don't know where they think that comes from, but that's how brainwashing would work, right? You wouldn't know that you were getting it. So, okay, let's assume there's some mythical brainwashing out there. But the thing that's really telling, I think, is two things. One is that he accused me of being brainwashed while admitting he never left the United States. Like, he's new to looking at travel, he has no concept of the world, and he's seeing everything through a view that he doesn't have control of. But that an agency that we know is looking to discredit Nicaragua does feed him the information in. So he knows he has this skewed view, and yet he acts like it's definitely true without neither logic nor evidence to back it up. So that's the first piece. The second piece is I'm a pretty established world traveler. I have lived all over the United States. I'm from the Northeast, where we tend to have a bit more education as to world stuff. I grew up on the border, so international stuff was very normal, like the idea of crossing into other countries, how passport works, how visas work. Even though I didn't travel all over the world as a kid, I did travel internationally nonstop as a kid. I have lived in 8 countries. I have visited 35-ish, right? And spent a bit of time in many of them. I speak more than one language, not well, but I do. And I have put in a lot of time abroad and have worked internationally. When I was living in the United States, a great deal of that time was as a representative of foreign, either foreign governments or foreign banks, right? So my amount of working internationally, even though I wasn't physically present in those countries, is very high. So I have a very strong international experience in general. Testing the voice. Okay, it says it's good. That's the first piece. So to say the person who's never left the United States and then the person who has a lot in a lot of different places, not just one, right? This is, well, you heard from this other people. No. I've got this view from all over the world. And you know, my wife has traveled to other places than me and a few more, right? So and to completely different areas, and has a lot of similar insights, right? And we get it from a lot of different places and can apply logic and can see where all the governments say things about other governments and then see what's actually like in all those different places. That gives you a context that's really important. So just having this person who has a myopic view and no power to know how it could be applied to the world stage. And then me, who is on the upper side of travel. I'm not a huge traveler, but I'm a moderately high traveler. I'm far above the average and have quite a bit of worldview and have been in countries during wars. I've been in countries during the government changing over and being overthrown. I have been involved with business in those countries. I don't just show up and hang out. I'm often there to work with governments or to work with big companies in those countries or whatever. Not so much anymore. Nonprofits that work with governments, like all kinds of things. So I have a bit, I'm not saying I'm the expert. I'm just saying that I have a pretty solid worldview that makes being easily brainwashed, especially by really obvious stuff, kind of hard, right? I'm used to there being all kinds of misinformation and going, yeah, that's just silly. Like, stop. Then he gave a list of things and said, these things are absolutely true. I know, right? Really belligerently. And it's like, okay, but you it's not just that I know they're not true and you know that I know they're not true. Like, I don't know what you're trying to do by how you're going to convince me by telling me the sky's not blue, but I live here. And many of the things, not all, but many of the things on his list are things that people watch the show and you can see that they're not true every day. And this is a reason that I'm so passionate about walking around anywhere, showing the world in general. Yeah, I'm in Nicaragua most of the time and I love it here, but I love walking around Guatemala and showing it. I can't wait to walk around Honduras and get a bunch for you. I've got a trip I'm trying to schedule to El Salvador to walk around for you guys. I'm doing a ton, hopefully very soon in South America. It's gonna be fantastic. And one of the big things that I like to show is just how safe the world is. The US tries really hard to make the world feel unsafe. And some of it is unsafe, but a lot of it is safe. And people from all over are like, why does the US say these things about us? I don't know, but they do. And getting out and rolling the camera and going those places and showing it live-ish, right? Just me walking around, just me driving around. This is me. I can't hide anything. I can edit a little bit, but when I'm going to Managua, you're going to see the footage. If it doesn't show up, something went wrong, right? I'm in Managua. You can see the police. You can see the Catholic processions. You can see the churches. You can see the happy people in the street. You can see the things that they're doing. You can see that they can drink alcohol. You can see that they can dance. You can see that they're listening to music. All these things that he's saying doesn't exist here, right? You can see that we own businesses. You can see, like, all this stuff is very visible, very firsthand. It's not like, well, I heard from a guy. He's like, I know people who. No, you don't. Completely made that up, right? How do you have this supposed very, very exclusive access to this information? You don't. You made that up. I'm actually here. I talk to real people all the time. I am one of these real people. He's making claims about me, right? This is one of those things I remember very strongly. I once was dealing with a company that was completely fraudulent. They were called Cloud at Cost out of Canada, and they were selling fake services. And I remember being in a situation, I think that's who it was, where we got into an argument with them. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's not who it was. They were pretty screwy. Sometime I'm going to tell this story, sometime soon, I hope. But I was dealing with this company, not Cloud at Cost, ignore that, who they went out and said, it was liquid nitrogen overclocking, LNO. They're gone, right? Because of me. But we'll tell that story. But they made this claim, they didn't say my name, but they made a claim that this person at this company, this very high-ranking official, used their products and made this claim in an argument with me in front of a vendor where we're like, these people are scamming you, and this is a legal problem. Like and they said, we have this person. And we looked at them and we said, no, they don't, because that person is me. They just lied about me to my face, trying to convince me that they were my customer or that I was their customer. Obviously, that is not true. And that caught them in how much they were just making things up. They hadn't even done the research to know what companies they could lie about, and had accidentally picked one that's where I worked, and they picked my position at that company, which is amazing because it's a really big company. So that's basically what happened here. He decided to go after these things and say, you're brainwashed, and like the buildings you see aren't real. The people you see on the street aren't real. What are you talking about? Like, this is like flat earth stuff. Like, he actually thinks that, he doesn't. Obviously, he's just lying. He's just making stuff up, thinking that he can tell me the things that I'm filming aren't really being filmed. What? Yeah. So that's the level of he thinks he can just yell at me. That's what brainwashing means. Like, it means all the gloves are off. We're just lying about anything at this point. And we warned you because we said you were brainwashed. Like, trust me, if someone says you've been brainwashed as a start of an argument, guaranteed they already know they have not a leg to stand on, but they're about to try to bully you into thinking something ridiculous, right? The U.S. doesn't go to foreign wars. The U.S. is always the defender in foreign wars. The U.S. economy is completely collapsed and will never recover. Whatever crazy thing that people want to say. Look, the U.S. economy is going to go down some. It's also going to rebound quite a bit. Things are not that bad. The U.S. does get involved in foreign wars. It's not always bad, but it generally is. They do some really atrocious things. They're one of the worst offenders of crimes abroad. Nobody threatens world democracy more than the United States. These are things you just have to accept, right? You're never going to be able to travel and witness the world and deal with the fact if you're convinced the U.S. can do no wrong, because when you get there, and they do a lot of good, Don't get me wrong. They do a lot of great stuff. But when you get to other countries and country after country after country after country, and the theme of their country is how do we recover from the United States completely dismantling democracy and forcing us into a different position. It doesn't matter where you go in the world. That's going to be a story you run into in most countries. It doesn't take much traveling around any region before it's, oh, well, you know, even North Korea. How did North Korea end up as a communist country? Because the United States drew the parallel line before the war and said, okay, Russia can have everything north of this line. The U.S. literally took away the right of choice from the North Koreans after World War II. A Navy official did this. Really great story. If you ever want to read about how this happened, read the book Pacific by Simon Winchester, and he goes into exactly who the people were, what they were thinking, how casually they did this in a meeting, how Korea wasn't involved. This is just some U.S. military officials drew a line, said, Russia can have this. We're going to placate them by throwing all these people under the Russian bus. They gave them to Stalin, and now are still, you know, what is it, 73 years later, actually at war, maybe not actively, with North Korea, and angry at these people for having been stuck in a position the United States chose for them. We didn't exactly force it, you know, they could have fought off Russia, I guess, but they weren't supposed to. The agreement was that we would support Russia in taking up to the line but no further. Right? Like, it's a really interesting situation, but it really shows, even when the U.S. had like nothing to do with it, we said, okay, Russia, you are indemnified up to this point. Do anything you want. And there's no way anyone was going to stop them. North Korea was forbidden from the U.S. and all of its allies from coming for support, including to South Korea. And so what were they to do? They had little to no choice. They didn't have the resources to stand up to Russia, especially immediately in the aftermath of World War II. Of course, the United States engineered them into the position they are in today. But the U.S. doesn't want to talk about that. People don't want to look at that history. They just want to be angry with them for the situation they were put in, rather than dealing with how they got there in the first place and how to move forward with them now. I'm not saying that North Korea is doing a great job. They've not handled the situation well, it seems like. I agree. But there's a much bigger picture here that's very important. And if you're going to travel to anywhere in the world, you need to be prepared to deal with the fact that the United States is not an altruistic organization going around and making the world a better place. Very much of the world, they often, wherever you go in the world, they understand Americans didn't make these choices. Americans don't have the power to control their government. Americans don't have say and direct what happens. They are victims as much as everyone else, just not as badly in most cases. They're not out to get Americans like America likes to tell you that they are. Americans are safe. Most places in the world, we are not seen as a threat as individuals. America is seen in some cases as being a threat and in some cases not. But you have to separate those two. But a common ploy is to pretend that when people, and this is one of the things he said in this email, right? Oh, they're anti-America. You're in danger. There's Americans everywhere here. No one's in any danger. It's complete BS. Are people upset with America? Yes. Was I standing there with a whole big group of those people who were, you know, angry at what America did in the past? Yes. Were they angry with me for being an American? No, in no way whatsoever. And he saw this in the videos. And his response is, you know, you're in danger. Those people they wanted to get you, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. But those are the kind of ploys that people use. Thanks for joining me. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Allen Miller. I already mentioned the email. Like and subscribe. Put it on social media. Tell your friends. And I will see all of you tomorrow.